Guys, this latest chapter of My Hero Academia was painful in the most compelling ways possible. The tone of the story has already been very dark as compared to the previous, and here, it looks like things will only be getting darker from now on, and I am both excited and unsettled. With the previous chapter, the top 3 heroes had finally made it to Deku's position and would do their best to assist with the immediate danger, now desperate to save the life of Lady Nagan, and gather as much meaningful intel as they possibly could in regards to Shigaraki and All For One. And as they saved her, in recognizing the purity and true looks of heroism in their eyes, Lady Nagan was moved enough to convey what she knew. That as instructed by All For One, she was to apprehend Deku within 2 months and deliver him to a particular mansion in the woods. However, as it turns out, Lady Nagan was far from the only one called upon by All For One to take on such a task, as there were plenty more figures out there to be worried about. From here, Overhaul would be apprehended as well, wherein Deku would strike a deal with him, that if he is able to extend a proper apology to Eri, the child he so severely tortured, then he would be willing to honor his arrangement with Lady Nagan himself. But it seems like once this conversation was over, Deku's every waking thought would be consumed by All For One. Eventually, he, along with some other professional heroes, Endeavor, Edgeshot, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, and Best Jeanist, would make their way towards the aforementioned Woodland Mansion in pursuit of this villainous threat. And at this time, Deku was clearly being reckless even by Endeavor standards. As to him, time was of the essence, with his enemies yet unable to steal this power from him. But from within this empty interior, Deku would find himself met by a projected message from the nefarious All For One himself. He had predicted this very circumstance perfectly, something he thoroughly enjoys doing. He knew Deku all too well, as he'd expressed that someone like him couldn't possibly abandon someone like her, which is to say that his selection of Lady Nagan was a tactical entrance in and of itself as a way of demoralizing Deku by way of her assumed failure. All For One is playing with his food here, guys. Now, All For One would here go on to declare the futility of varying governmental bodies and structures, as the core is merely a shortcoming intrinsic to mankind by nature. Furthermore stating that during his extended stay in prison, the only one he thought of was Deku, as with All Might being as useless as he is now, isn't someone who interests him in the slightest. With each battle, the essence of Deku's very soul will be grinded down to nothing with no end in sight, as Deku was next in line to not only inherit this incredible power, but also this horrible enemy, as the manor suddenly exploded. To follow this, our latest chapter would have all heroes previously involved in this mansion raid, with the exception of Deku and the addition of Hawks, convene in some abandoned warehouses. They would speak of how they only so narrowly managed to escape the explosion, as Edgeshot would furthermore question if they have yet exhausted all information from Lady Nagan. And with this, it would all but be confirmed that she will be able to survive past this point. I'm not too sure what Horikoshi may have planned for her character from here, but perhaps we will have a better idea of that at a later point. Regardless, in the here and now, there wasn't much else that she could stand to offer them. Kamui Woods would then make a comment that even the most depraved of people struggle to survive when on the brink of death, something I'm sure we know from the likes of both Deku and Shigaraki. Past this, Edgeshot would provide a proposition. He would suggest that they take a gamble and collect all the remaining heroes, and with the secret of One For All in mind, they launch the most comprehensive search they possibly can with their limited resources. From here, however, Mount Lady would argue that, as made evident by their latest escapade, such a course of action stands to further burden Deku both physically and mentally. In the end, he is at this point their only hope, and so a more supportive role may be their best bet. Now, I must say that Mount Lady as a character has so subtly progressed, and I absolutely love it. So do bear in mind that she is the only non-top 10 hero in this situation. Not only that, but she has also been entrusted with the truth about One For All. That is major development as far as I'm concerned, and truly, my admiration of this character has only increased. And would you look at that badass scar she now has? Boy oh boy does Horikoshi love adding scars and wounds to his characters. And I'm not just talking about the physical ones. But you see guys, this is why we don't tell people our business. Look how fast this once ever cherished secret has spread around. The heroes are some snitches for real. But rather than directly responding to either of these points, Endeavor would bring up the recent retirement of Death Arms. Now let me tell you, this one hurt. My Hero Academia has within it a number of characters, many of which are admittedly of negligible significance to the entirety of the story. However, be this as it may, Death Arms was amongst the very first heroes we had ever seen in the series. He has been around since chapter 1. And this not only hits hard for me as a reader of this story for so long, but to have this conveyed to Mount Lady is rough as well. Again, although these characters aren't exactly at the forefront of the series, their little interactions with one another serve to illustrate that they do in fact have lives of their own that we don't readily observe. During the Hero Billboard event, a closeness between Mount Lady and Death Arms was evident, sort of like a big brother or fatherly vibe. She, Kamui Woods, and Death Arms were a sort of friendly heroic trio. One we saw work security detail together during the sports festival, so yeah, this was rough. Here we have Death Arms in the midst of removing his costume to convey that he tried his hardest and struggled day in and day out without rest. But what he received was a sea of criticism and negativity. And sure, there were of course those who cheered him on, but unfortunately, the negative comments, the ones that cut deep, weighed far heavier than their positive counterparts. But even through it all, he truly believed himself to be different, a sentiment he is sure that everyone else possesses as well. But in the end, he wasn't cut out to be a hero, as all he is just a man. And listen, as someone who's dedicated themselves to this whole YouTube thing, I can certainly relate to his sentiments in regards to negativity. In the grand scheme of things, it is a rarity, but when you find yourself in a profession where just about anyone can go ahead and criticize all that you do and work hard on, it can be taxing on the mind despite all the good that there is to be had. And especially early on, that was a major struggle for sure, but thankfully, as opposed to going in this direction with it all, I feel like at this point I am way better at handling it. In fact, you guys over here, the plot army, are so damn supportive that I don't even notice bad comments anymore. It's crazy. I've been doing this for years across more than one channel at this point, and never before have I experienced such a wellspring of goodness, so thank you. But taking this in relations outside of myself, perhaps this is the convention of Horikoshi as an artist as well. I feel like with works like this, heavily emotional moments even, a true mangaka lets their experiences and feelings bleed onto the page, and that is what we are seeing. This is the turmoil and inner conflicts of Horikoshi to some extent being conveyed. The exact details of which are not important for us to know as viewers, but really to do so, although it is saddening, it is a wonderful thing in the way of artistic expression and fulfillment, which only makes me appreciate this story that much more. When it came to the Paranormal Liberation Front's exposure, Death Arms took such an active role with such grit that Endeavor did not imagine that he would quit, but he did. And I mean hell, Endeavor himself, the #1 hero, was on the verge of doing so by himself, so it's not too unbelievable. One after another, heroes have been hanging up the mantle for good. Meanwhile, the media continue to draw ever closer to the truth about Deku, with information leaking from now retired heroes. So again, heroes cannot keep their mouths shut to save their lives. For this reason, Endeavor would fear such a heavy burden being placed on the already overloaded shoulders of Deku in the event that the public were to know the truth. Now, Mount Lady would provide a question I'm sure many of us have had in the past as well. Why doesn't All For One just expose the nature of Deku's quirk himself? To which Endeavor would argue that if he did, they would extend every research available to protect Deku, and so the fact that he hasn't done so is evidence enough that he doesn't want that to happen. But sadly, in the face of this worldly situation, they have no choice but to rely on Deku to progress his conflict, as they are too limited in terms of manpower. But just then, Endeavor would receive a call. It was from Shoto. However, he would have to ignore it for now, as the matter of handling his son Toya alongside his family would have to take the back burner in the face of all of this. But even still, he wouldn't be the only one to receive a call, as Hawks' phone would ring off as well. It was All Might. Apparently, Deku had not only encountered the second assassin, but he had taken them out immediately there by his lonesome. And here, Deku looks absolutely mangled. This is far from the visage of the main character we have all become accustomed to. Just as All Might began to call out to him, Deku would rush off elsewhere. He would convey in a single breath that the enemy had no additional information to provide, and that All Might should be careful, as he may be rigged to explode as well. And this right here, this disturbed me. The fact that Deku has taken an explosion into consideration, and instead of ensuring their safety, villain or not, he instead began to rush off elsewhere, is terrifying. That is not the Deku that I know, because sure, maybe leaving it to the cleanup crew is perfectly rational, but that is not the heroic Deku that we know. This is incredibly unbecoming. From here, All Might would then yell out for his young protege to hold on for a moment, and when Deku stopped in his tracks, he would offer him yet another bento, as he hadn't eaten in a while. And then, oh man, my heart broke apart with this one. Deku continued to go forward, as he told All Might that he doesn't have to follow him around anymore. Oh my goodness, the pain. He'd tell All Might that he is fine by his lonesome, as he considered the words of All for One. All Might would urge him to reconsider, but Deku would then say that he is already more than capable on his own, that he can already sustain 100% power without suffering damage, just as All Might had in the past. This being based on his use of Fajin, as with it he was in fact able to sustain a Fox 100%, wherein he was faster than a speeding bullet and capable of staggering damage. Deku would reflect on everything in that moment, from Shimura Nana to Gran Torino, and what he needed to do when it comes to Shigaraki. From his conversations with All Might, and specifically all the way back to chapter 22 of the series, when just before the sports festival, All Might told him to make his presence known by telling the world that he is here. Now, All Might in his heart knew exactly what this was. This was Deku pushing him out for his safety. And again, like the Endeavor Agency arc, Deku wouldn't be looking back at him anymore. This would be the last time. As with a softer expression on his now mangled cowl, Deku would tell All Might not to worry about him anymore. But with the way that he looks right now, how could you not? And so All Might would again call out to Deku and extend a hand to reach him, but Deku was already far from his grasp. He knew the weight of responsibility on Deku's shoulders better than anyone. He needed to tell him that it was okay to take a break, but it was too late. As in the rain, All Might would fall over with the bento spilling out onto the ground, as Deku would leave him behind. Now, interestingly enough, listening in on this exchange from the shadows was none other than Stain. Stain, the hero killer, who as expressed on Twitter, we now imagine will play a major role in revitalizing the main character we know and love, perhaps usurping this role from All Might. And lest we forget, Stain harbors no resentment or ill will towards Deku or All Might, as these were the only two heroes he was willing to recognize. And I mean, even if he did, Deku's danger sense would have picked up on him. But from here, we would then have varying accounts from the populace in regards to rumors about Deku. They would speak of his numerous quirks being like that of All for One. They would question if in reality he was a Nomu. They would speak of how he is supposedly here to help, despite being covered in blood, scars, and mud. But one thing they could all agree upon was that he did not look like a hero at all, as we now see a wretched Deku on his unending pursuit. And that was the chapter. This man Deku is looking like Spawn, and as someone on Twitter noted, the way Black Whip is stylized here is reminiscent of Spider-Man's Iron Spider suit. This chapter was a complete assault on my feelings. All For One has this man Deku right in the palm of his hands, and it is really unfortunate. There is no reality in which I imagine or expect Deku to domineer All For One right now. In terms of power, he is definitely not there, and in terms of intelligence and or tactical know-how, he is nowhere close. He is not even in the same stratosphere. If nothing else, Deku needs to be humbled. The power he possesses is great indeed, but it is not at full capacity. And before it is, he will need to be physically humbled for sure. Now, as I told you guys before, when it comes to karma, Horikoshi does not play around. Even if it doesn't feel like it at times, eventually, everyone in this series gets punished for their misdeeds. In this case, All Might's neglect of those who sincerely cared about his well-being is coming back to haunt him, as he is now on the receiving end. And really, with the depiction of it here, him falling over in the rain, losing his food, that was violation, that was horrible. And at that, we can only hope that history doesn't just repeat itself even further by having All Might suffer a fate similar to his former sidekick, Sir Night-Eye. Although, it is something we expect with how frequently we receive death flags for the character. With our very first My Hero Academia video here on the channel, we questioned the proposed notion once provided by All Might in regards to being a hero with a shining smile that reassures the people, a prospect that he himself in the midst of crisis never actually exemplified. Something that has furthermore at this point all but been forgotten with how Deku looks these days. I mean, even the simpler notion of being a comfort provided during the provisional license exam, which even the likes of Bakugo had to learn, has been at this point disregarded. And just when you thought My Hero Academia couldn't get any darker, Horikoshi decided to drop this on all our heads. Guys, I need to know how you are feeling about all this, so please let us know in the comments below and subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because there are plenty more conversations to be had on the subject of all of this. And hey, thank you guys for 250,000 subscribers at this point. The Plot Army just keeps getting stronger and stronger by the day, and it's because of you that we are willing to keep charging ahead regardless of the situation, like Deku is right now. So again, thank you so much for the incredible support. And while you're at it, be sure to follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at PlotArmorYT for all the latest and greatest anime and manga news, memes, information, giveaways, and the ability to connect with us and the Plot Army as a whole, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.